Thank you, Minister, for being with us today. You or someone from your office was in daily contact with Commissioner Lucky in the immediate days following the Nova Scotia attacks on April 18th and 19th, correct?
I was not in contact with her on a daily basis, but frequently in the days afterwards, I was briefed by Commissioner Lucky.
As well as your Chief of Staff and your Deputy Minister were in relatively daily contact with Commissioner Lucky in some capacity?
Yes, I assume so.
So would you be comfortable tabling for the committee before our next meeting your calendar, your Deputy Minister's calendar, and your Chief of Staff's calendar and phone logs relevant to your communication with Commissioner Lucky prior to our next committee meeting, specifically from the dates of April 18th to April 28th, and including April 28th, and that would be for the reason of full transparency of your communications and your office's communications with her?
I actually have a timeline with me, and I'm quite comfortable sharing that. And when I personally had conversations, there's a number of different things in that timeline.
Does that include the communication from your Deputy Minister and from your Chief of Staff with Commissioner Lucky as well?
And again, I'm more than happy to provide you with a timeline of all my communications on this matter with Commissioner Lucky and with others. Including
the Deputy Minister's communications and the Chief of Staff, Zita Astravez's communications?
I don't know if if the Deputy Minister has that information available, so I don't want to make a commitment to it, but that's a question certainly you can pose to him.
Certainly, there would be phone logs of all the calls that they have made. Can you commit to tabling those for the committee before our next meeting of yourself, the Deputy Minister, and the Chief of Staff, Zita Astravez, before our next committee meeting?
And again, I don't have direct access to those logs, but if they exist, I think it's very important.
You commit to it?
If I may, I think it's very important that this committee have all the information that it requires to make an accurate assessment of what transpired.
Great. Thank you very much. Just moving on. In a June 28th, 2020 Globe and Mail article, you were quoted confirming that you did speak to the RCMP about the upcoming OIC ban. When was Commissioner Lucky informed of the May 1st announcement date?
Commissioner Lucky had been working with us, but Commissioner Lucky, as the Commissioner of the RCMP, is responsible for the Canadian Firearms Program. The Canadian Firearms Program, as it was integral in the work
Minister Blair,
that we...
when was she informed of the May 1st date of that announcement?
And I don't, that's a question that would have to be
When was the May 1st date determined for that announcement? Was it before or after the Nova Scotia attacks?
The date of release was determined after the Nova Scotia shooting.
Thank you. You're aware of the email sent by Commissioner Lucky on April 23rd, 4 days after the attacks to your Chief of Staff, Zita Astravez, containing information your government had requested concerning weapons used in the attacks, correct?
Yes, I'm aware of it.
And you're also aware that the Commissioner's email contained a strong warning that the information must not be shared beyond you and the Prime Minister because it could jeopardize the active investigation, correct?
I'm not only aware of it, but I respected that throughout.
And you're aware of the meeting the Commissioner called for her and her Nova Scotia officials immediately following the Nova Scotia press conference on April 28th?
I was not aware of that. I've subsequently become aware of it through media reports.
You're aware that during that meeting the Commissioner reprimanded her Nova Scotia deputies for not sharing the information she warned you not to share, correct?
I'm not aware of that. I was not a party to that conversation, and I've only read media reports. I've not discussed that in any way with the Commissioner.
Your office obtained assurances from Commissioner Lucky that the type of weapons used in the shooting would be released to the public at the April 28th press conference, correct?
No, that's incorrect.
So it was not assured. You had no idea that that was Commissioner Lucky's expectation in that press conference?
Let me be very clear. At no time did I ask Commissioner Lucky to reveal that information. At no time did I direct her in any way in her communications. She did not make any promise to me.
A bit. I'm not asking if you had asked her, but I'm asking if you were aware of the Commissioner's expectation that on that April 28th press conference that information would be released. Were you aware that that was Commissioner Lucky's expectation?
No, I was not.
You were not aware. In a late night email sent from Commissioner Lucky to your Chief of Staff and your Deputy Minister on April 28th following the meeting and the press conference, her email to your Deputy and the Chief of Staff said without any context whatsoever that the press conference was, quote, to quote Commissioner Lucky, not the expectation execution she was expecting. Again, she said in her email without further context that the press conference was, quote, not the execution she was expecting. So that's in reference to the immediate questions on the types of weapons used. The lack of context provided in Commissioner Lucky's
I can't
email.
comment on the context of that. I wasn't aware of it, and I have no knowledge of what Commissioner was referring to.
It seems that your Deputy Minister and your Chief of Staff were fully aware of the expectation of Commissioner Lucky of that press conference. To the Deputy Minister, were you aware of the context of this email? Because it was not listed in the email, and it was written that you would have been aware.
I have no idea what...
Minister, please. Thank you. Were you aware of the context of the email?
Not in the sense that you are posing the question. I was aware that the commissioner expected there to be full disclosure of what had the RCMP knew for the sake of the public.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. So you were aware of the context of the email, being that the commissioner's expectation of the April 28th press conference was that that information on the weapons would be released. So thank you for confirming that you were aware of the context.
Ms. Danko,
When-
if I may, that's simply not correct. I don't believe there's anything in that email that makes reference to any information about
I will
firearms.
just read it again. So there is no context in this email, but Commissioner Lucky said in reference to the press conference that it was not the execution she was expecting. She then went on to provide comment from media and Darren Campbell of when he was asked about the weapons used. So I appreciate that you were aware of the context of that email, even though it was not listed, which would mean that you were aware of it earlier in the day.
I'd like to just make sure you're clear on
please go
my
ahead.
point here.
You've got 10 seconds. You've got 10 seconds to be clear.
To the best of my recollection, the commissioner had provided some assurance that the RCMP would
You?
provide the public with a full story of what had happened.